Thank you for the honor of including me into this inner circle of honoring and remembering a special neshama that we don't know God's mysterious ways, but there's no question everything I've heard, everything I've read, and everything I've seen in the qualities of Shmuel indicate on the uniqueness of this neshama. And we know when a neshama is taken far, far earlier in an untimely fashion, God has some powerful plan, because there's no way that Hashem would put family, father, a mother, family, loved ones, friends, into such anguish and pain if there wasn't something deeper. So I feel honored and humbled to be here. Now, what can I add after we've just heard from so many illustrious speakers, friends, and family? And I just don't want to, there's no need to speak as an end in itself. It's to be something that is practical and that we can all relate to. And so let me begin on a personal note. I did not know Shmuel personally, but I've been doing some reading. I was speaking to his dear mother. I read and heard her talk that she gave last year, right after his passing, to the students. Deeply, deeply touching. And one thing that jumped out at me, which I really believe is something unique. You know, we're right now in a very challenging time. Besides for the pandemic and COVID-19, besides for the racial tensions, besides for the upheavals that literally have upended and disrupted everybody's lives. And we see clearly that Hashem is in control, because no one else has a clue what will be next week and 2 weeks. We as Chassidim especially are right now in a very challenging time. It's now going to be 26 years since Gimel Tammuz. Gimel Tammuz, that word Gimel Tammuz, everyone who knows what those words mean carries all kinds of layers and dimensions of significance. And as was pointed out, the yahrziet of Shmuel is Chav Ches Sivan, the day the Rebbe and the Rebbetzin came to America. And just 5 days later, it was Gimel Tammuz. So this is a period where we have the Rebbe coming to America, beginning that final stage, as the Rebbe writes in his notes about Chav Ches Sivan, that this is the stage, a new Tnufa, Chadosha, a new era began in the spreading of Torah and Chassidus, with the establishment by the Frierdiker Rebbe of the Moisdes that he appointed the Rebbe to lead, Merkus L'Nyonei Chinuch, Kohos, Machne Yisrael. And this would become the Rebbe's first efforts, the public arena, even though the Rebbe did much work for the Frierdiker Rebbe before that. But Chav Ches Sivan marks that beginning of a new era. And then just a few days later, literally 26 years ago, Gimel Tammuz is that cataclysmic event that has so affected us all and still haunts us in its own mysterious way. What exactly is those Gimel Tammuz? And here we have honoring a Chassidish Bocher, as was mentioned by a few of you, who is, Hashem takes his neshama on Chav Ches Sivan. So how do we look at all of that? So here's something that maybe many of you do not know about Shmuel that I just heard today, and I'll share with you. The last request he made of his parents before his passing was he wants to go Gimel Tammuz. Last year, Gimel Tammuz was Shabbos. He wanted to go to the oil. So he asked his parents, and his parents said yes. Well, tragically, his wish was not fulfilled exactly the way he wanted. He ended up going to the oil, but not as a neshama beguf. And Chav Ches Sivan, I guess a day or two after when he made that request, or maybe the same day, I'm not sure exactly, his neshama went up. It was Oila Lamaila. So he ended up going Gimel Tammuz. Immediately when I heard this, it struck a chord. And it reminded me of a story I heard from my father-in-law, Rab Hirsch Gansberg, Rab Tzvi Hirsch Gansberg, Chassidish She'id, who lived many years in Crown Heights, was born in Russia, ended up in Eretz Yisrael, and then lived here many years. So it was a part of the fabric of this community. And he was actually the person who would begin the Nigunim, the songs by Fabrengen. After Rab Shmuel Zalman moved to Israel in the early 60s, so Rabbi Yael Khan would begin the first Nigun, and my Shver would begin all the other songs. He was a Bal Menagin, part of Nechayach, part of Tzach, an Askin, a very dedicated soldier. He told me, listen to this, the year was Tufshin Tes, 1949. It was right before Shavuos. There was a Chassidish Sherid that lived in Crown Heights. His name was Michal Dvorkin. Michal Dvorkin was known. As a matter of fact, there's Michal Dvorkin's voice on certain Nechayach albums. The Rebbe gave out tapes of two songs that he taught. One is Michal's Lotchever's Nigun, another Nigun that Michal Dvorkin sang. Michal Dvorkin was the Chassidish Sherid. My Shver, my father-in-law, was a bocher then in 770. He had come from Israel in the year 1947, and he was here in 770 in those years. So it's 1949. It's the day before Erev Shavuos, 2 days before Shavuos, month of Sivan of that year. And Ramchol, my father-in-law, as a bocher, would be mishamishim. He would help him out with different matters that he needed. He was already not a young man. And even different things that he needed, physical help and different errands and so on. Michal calls Hirsch Gansberg and says to him, please go over to 770. He lived at Albany, Eastern Parkway in Albany, on Eastern Parkway, closer to Albany. He asked Rabbi Gansberg to go to 770 and go to the Rebbe Ramash. Our Rebbe was called the Ramash, is the acronym for his name. To ask, he wants to go into Yechidus before Shavuos to the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Rebbe went into the Frierdiker Rebbe and came out immediately, and he told my father-in-law, he told Rabbi Gansberg, tell Rabbi Michal that the Rebbe said the following. The Frierdiker Rebbe said like this, that Ein Hazman Groma, we're going to Matan Torah now, so there's no time for Yechidus to come in before Shavuos. Aber bald dal mir beide sein in einem und mit damot schmusen. However, we will both soon be together, and we'll converse, we'll speak. That's what he said. The next morning, late morning, Rab Michal Dvorkin passed away. Erev Shavuos Tufshin Tes. The whole story of how they made an effort, the Rebbe was very makpid, wanted very much that he should be buried before Shavuos. It was not easy to do. They needed permits. It was a complicated matter, but they got it done right before Yom Tov. He was laid to rest. If you go to the oil, he was laid to rest. He's right to the right side of the oil. Remember, there was no oil then. It was Tufshin Tes. The only one that was there in that area were very few. There was the Rebbetzin Sterner Sada and a few others, but there was no oil where he was put. The Frierdiker Rebbe was nostalgic just a few months later. Sivan Tufshin Tes, Sivan, Tammuz of El Tishrei Cheshvan. 6 months, a little less than 6 months later, the Frierdiker Rebbe was nostalgic. Yud Shvat, Tufshin Yud, 1950. And where did they put the Frierdiker Rebbe? Right near Michal Dvorkin. Or you can say Michal Dvorkin was where he ended up being near the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Frierdiker Rebbe's words were, Bald zayin in einem, soon we will be together, and then we'll converse. What do we know from this? What do we know from this? That part of the mystery of life is, yes, there's the conversations going on in many different dimensions. And I heard the story of Shmuel, that he said he wants to go Gimel Tammuz. And he ended up going for Gimel Tammuz in a different way. Reminds us immediately of this story. When Moshe Karnovsky, may he be well, his brother, his older brother, his name was Yaakov Karnovsky. He passed away as a bocher. His father called him over. The Rebbe called over his father at a Fabrengen, and he says, your son now is listening to Chassidus Bam Shver. He's listening to Chassidus in heaven by the Frierdiker Rebbe. So there's no question in my mind that Shmuel request, whether he understood what he was asking consciously or not, but God runs the show in a mysterious way. Yes, is conversing now with the Rebbe, and he's there with him, just as the Rebbe assured us. I heard from Rabbi Abel Groner, Olav Shalom, the Rebbe's longtime secretary. He told me the story. I heard directly from him in the early 60s. The Rebbe asked Rabbi Abel, he said, please prepare. Everybody who sends a note or a zettel or a question to me, to the Rebbe, please make an index card with their name and their address and their phone number. Essentially, what today we call a contact list, a database. Then it was called a Rolodex. And that's what Rabbi Abel started doing. Every zettel came to the Rebbe, an index card, which was alphabetized, and he had it. And the Rebbe told him why. He says, when it comes Rosh Hashanah, I want to send a Rosh Hashanah letter to every person who wrote to me. This way we have an organized system. And other ways that we'll use it. Came around after Shavuos time, sometime midsummer, the Rebbe tells Rabbi Abel, start preparing letters, use those index cards to prepare letters that will go out in the month of Elul to everyone wishing them Hashanah Teva. The Rebbe would send a letter to everyone signed by the Rebbe. That was enough time to do so. So he started typing up these form letters. Once he had enough letters, he brought them into the Rebbe. The Rebbe had them. The Rebbe signed each letter personally. The Abel Groner comes into the Rebbe one day and he sees all the letters are signed. Hundreds of letters, a pile like this. And then was another pile that the Rebbe had separated and put it on the side, much shorter pile. And the Rebbe tells him like this, here, these letters are signed. These are the people, v'zaynavek, in time, tzivishim. The people that passed away from the time that Abel wrote these letters, typed these letters, to the time that the Rebbe was signing them, the Rebbe separated them. He knew each one, and he put them in a separate pile. So Abel Groner tells me, Rabbi Abel tells me, that the Rebbe he takes both piles, and he's ready to go. So the Rebbe says, why are you taking the second pile? The first pile take in order to put into envelopes, stamp them, and mail them. So the Abel said, because the Rebbe says, so I'm going to take them, and I guess he was going to discard them. The Rebbe told him these words. He said, first of all, they also need a good year. The neshamas that are already passed on. They also need a Shana Teva. So the Rebbe is wishing them a Shana Teva. And zweitens, the Rebbe said, und der Adress, wozu sie schicken, mistame weißt du nicht, is lo sie da. And the address where to send these letters, you probably don't know. So leave the letters here. You hear these words? That means every neshama has an address. We don't know the address, but the Rebbe knows the address. So when I heard this Gimel Tammuz story, all this comes to mind. And then you hear the qualities of this young Chassidish bocher, this young man that you had the schus, Osher and Rivka, to give birth to and bring up in such a beautiful way. I want to say to you, there's not a question that his address is with the Rebbe, and we don't know the address, but the Rebbe does. And that gives us a lot of reassurance, a lot of strength, because there's no bigger bracha than to be with the Rebbe. Now, of course, very clear, let's not minimize, that we want it all to be neshamas begufim, souls within bodies. But this brings us to the mystery, As soon as I heard Chav Ches Min Sivan is his yahrziet, as was mentioned by several of the speakers, there's no question. What is Chav Ches Sivan? So Rab Shais described it eloquently. Some other speakers mentioned different elements of it. I want to say this. The Rebbe personified the journeys. It's a journey. Coming to America, as the Frierdiker Rebbe said, who came to America a year and a half before the Rebbe did, Tes Adar Sheni Tovshin, 1940, right in the middle of what? World War II, when our dear brothers and sisters were being decimated in Europe. The Frierdiker Rebbe said a number of times, I did not come here because I wanted to come here. I did not come here. I would have rather stayed in the Soviet Union with our brother. I only came because Hashem forced me to come. God leads the footsteps of a person. One of the most powerful lessons is to remember that a God is in control, not us. As long as we can figure it out, we make our plans, and we make our plans where we are, whatever the divine providence is, to do our shlichus and our veda. But then there are times in history, and for the Jewish people, this is a common occurrence. We've always been traveling. It starts from Lech Lecha, from Avram Avinu, and the travels of our patriarchs and our matriarchs, and the travels that we are, the 42 journeys through the Midbar, and the journeys continue. El Maseh continues even until this day. How many journeys have we taken in our history, individually and collectively? God leads the footsteps, and when we recognize and understand that, that gives us a certain inner peace. Because we don't know the mystery of why we're led, where we're led, but there is a deeper purpose for it all. The Rebbe's coming to America was not a simple matter. He barely made it out of Nazi Europe. Just as the Frierdiker Rebbe is coming a little while earlier, was also not simple. God leads the footsteps. People wondered why the Rebbe didn't go to Eretz Yisrael. It was very clear, among many different answers. The bottom line was, Hashgacha Pratis led him to America. We don't make our own choices. When God wants a Rebbe to go to Israel, he'll make sure he knows when to go. Mashiach comes. So a Rebbe is the captain of the ship. And as the captain of the ship, he comes to a place like America, as was mentioned by Rabbi Taub, Chatzi Kader Atachten, the lowest of the low, in order to finish the job. And that's what you embrace. The Rebbe's mysterious journey is captured on Chav Ches Nissen. When I hear how a special soul like Shmuel was taken at such a tender age, there was only one thing: silence. As his mother so eloquently put when she spoke about it, silence. We don't have an answer. We surrender in a powerful way, not surrender as weakness, as strength. We accept the mystery of the journey of each soul, the mystery of the journey of life. And we understand that's part of the mission. We're on a mission, always on a mission. Whether we understand the beautiful parts of it and what we understand the twists and turns, we don't understand most of it. Sometimes we have a little inkling. But bottom line is, it's God's running the show. And when you're able to embrace that, and I saw it with my own eyes, and you read the stories of Chav Ches Nissen, Chav Ches Sivan rather, and the stories of the Frierdiker Rebbe's journeys, one thing that stands out is how they embraced the unknown. As the Frierdiker Rebbe said, I didn't want to come here, but I was led here. Now that I'm here, of course, we don't kick and scream, God forbid. We don't resist. We accept. And what do? You do the best with it. And the Frierdiker Rebbe, and then the Rebbe transformed the face of the earth, transformed the landscape of Jewish life and beyond, all beginning with Chav Ches Sivan from the Rebbe's point of view. So this is a tremendous lesson. Gimel Tammuz is all part of the same mystery. It's another mysterious leg of the journey. Who understands? It's one big question. It was never part of the plan. Gimel Tammuz came as a Helam V'Hester. It's a concealment. However, you go ahead and explain it or don't explain it. I'm perfectly fine accepting the Rebbe's words that he said in Tafshin Yud, after the stalkers of the Frierdiker Rebbe, and people wanted the Rebbe to become Rebbe. And one person wrote to the Rebbe, what's going to be with us? How could you not accept it? What's going to be? You know, the Rebbe answered, what's going to be? The Rebbe said, there are bigger things I don't know what will be. We have a big Rebbe and he'll take care of everything. This doesn't mean that we put up our hands and we don't do anything. It means it's a partnership. There are things we do not understand. And not understanding, and the mystery is not to be afraid of that. It's not surprising that God is a mysterious God. God's complex, very complex. But one thing we know for sure, look at the history of the Jewish people, our long journey, our marathon, with all its ups and downs and, horrendous experiences. What's the story? Where are we now? 3,800 years since Avram Avinu first took his step, Lech Lecha. And how many journeys we went through. And where are we? We're here. We may be a little wounded and limping. We have many things a lot of hurt and suffering, but we have not become sufferers. What I see, the tribute of your family, and besides this event, all that you're doing is the classic and quintessential response that the Rebbe taught us. We forge ahead. We don't understand everything. We have plenty of questions. We have plenty of complaints. But we will not allow ourselves to succumb and become victims. And it's exactly everything I read, I hear about Shmuel, is that he was a leader. He was a leader. No, I mean, it's amazing. One thing that struck me, I'll just read one little note that one of his friends wrote. He says, if I could speak to Shmuel now, I'd want to say the following. Shmuel, you're a wonderful friend. I had the privilege and honor to know you. You always knew the right thing to do or to say. It was so hard for me to hear that you've gone. And the fact that I'll never be zeiche to see you again hits me hard again and again and again. I hope that you're happy and well and content in the place where you are now and that you are watching over us from above. I love you tons and miss you tons. I mean, nothing is more raw and truthful and sincere as a friend writing. He's not an eloquent writer. He's not some orator writing from his heart. This is one little sample that just struck me. And I see it again and again in everything that I'm watching and witnessing. So we have here is that Shmuel is part of the mysterious journey that, however, is all part of a bigger picture. We will soon see the picture. It's like a narrative. Right now, we see the little pieces with our myopic vision. How much can we really see? We see step, step, step. The Baal Shem Tov has a wonderful and a very interesting mashal. It's called the mashal of the Schwindeltreppe. Schwindeltreppe is Yiddish for the swindling staircase. A swindling staircase. It's, or otherwise known as a spiral staircase. There's a staircase that can have many steps, but you see the destination. It may take you a while to get there, but it's a direct journey up the steps. Then there's a spiral staircase. Spiral staircase goes around and around, and you keep going up, but you keep on making circles. And every time you have to make a new revolution, you have to turn your back to the destination. That's why the Baal Shem Tov says it's called Schwindeltreppe. It's swindling. It swindles us. It deceives us into thinking you're not reaching your destination, because right when you're about to come to the apex, to the top, you have to turn all the way around. Your back is facing the destination, and you think, hey, I didn't make any progress. But in fact, you made all the progress. It's just one more step. See it through. Life is a spiral staircase. It's not a straight staircase. It's a journey. We human beings only see piece here, a piece there. Sometimes we see a little more, sometimes a little less. But the Rebbe sees. The Rebbe arrived, Chav Ches Sivan. He spoke Sichos. I had the schus. It was 50 years from when the Rebbe came to America. That was Chav Ches Sivan Tafshin Nun Aleph. The Rebbe arrived Tafshin Aleph, 1941. This was 1991. So I decided, I had an idea. Let's prepare a Kuntras Chav Ches Sivan. We'll gather together the history, things we know, stories, everything we know about Chav Ches, documents. I wrote into the Rebbe, and I asked, since I had the schus to write to the Rebbe, because we prepared the Rebbe's Farbrengens, so I wrote to the Rebbe Chav Ches a few weeks before. We want to prepare for the 50th year Chav Ches Sivan. The Rebbe said, check with Agudas Chabad, with Sirei Agudas Chabad for documents, information. Anyway, I started gathering stuff. I got different researchers. We found actually very fascinating things. We included all in this Kuntras. Then, to our surprise, the Kuntras is ready to go to print. And the Rebbe suddenly says he's going to distribute this Kuntras on the night of Chav Ches Sivan, 50 years from when he came to America. There's a burgundy cover, and the Rebbe handed it to everyone, I believe, with a $5 bill or $1 or $2, I don't remember, in a plastic little container. And that was a tremendous thing. Sus little tat, it started from our suggestion, and the Rebbe ended up doing that. There's a lot behind it. We don't have the time to go into all the details, but I'll just share one thing. The Rebbe came, I believe Chav Ches Sivan that year was sometime middle of the week. I don't remember what day. It could have been Tuesday, Monday or Tuesday. Thursday night, the Rebbe had a Farbrengen, the first Farbrengen, the Rebbe Farbrengen in America. He wasn't the Rebbe then, he was the Ramash, but he Farbrenged. I tried very hard to put together what the Rebbe spoke about. because there were no Hanochas. Nobody was, the Rebbe was the Frierdiker Rebbe. So the Rebbe spoke, no one really wrote it down. So it was hard to reconstruct, but I thought maybe I could reconstruct a little and then I could send it into the Rebbe. Maybe the Rebbe will add more information. So I'll just share this L'chvivus the Milsa, since it's a Chav Ches, Sivan Farbrengen here, the honor of Shmuel. So let me share this. So I began to gather. I did the same thing with another Sikha that you may be familiar with. The Rebbe once spoke in Tovshin Ches in 1948 about chess. Lessons we learned from playing chess, the chess moves. That too, I had to reconstruct from different people who heard it, but that the Rebbe ended up editing. It's printed in Yemei Bereshis. The Rebbe edited that whole Sikha. So I was trying to do the same thing here. I couldn't get a lot of information because there were very few that were around that still remembered. I remember I went to Mayor Greenberg, I went to Herschel Schusterman, I went to Herschel Folgeman. These were the guys that were around in the early 40s. Anyway, I wrote into the Rebbe. So I asked Mayor Greenberg and I asked Herschel Schusterman, I said, can I write into the Rebbe in your name that you were there and you're giving me a few points and you're making a request that the Rebbe should edit it. And maybe the Rebbe can give us some points that he spoke about and we would then develop it. I didn't want to take it on my own shoulders. I was smart enough not to be the one that asked the Rebbe, a little chutzpah. But I thought I could write it in their name, so they let them have the chutzpah, let them get the chelik if they're going to get a chelik. Anyway, they agreed actually. So I wrote to the Rebbe that at their request, since they were at that Farbrengen, the Rebbe did not answer, but I can tell you in the Rishimas that were published later, we have a Rishima where the Rebbe speaks about, he wrote up what he spoke about when he came to America, which was basically about Arba Chayovim Lahedus, about the four that make Birchas HaGemel. There are four different types of people. Someone who traveled through a desert, someone who was in danger, someone came out of a hospital. Anyway, just as a little interesting note, there's so much more to say. I want to share and conclude with this. I heard the heartfelt song, Rab Asher Nikolai Reznigan, named after Rab Asher, the great-grandfather of Shmuel, and of course, the great Chassid, Asher Nikolaever, that you are all descended from. And I want to share something that you may not be aware of. This is also from my shver. Since my father-in-law was a menagin, he once told me, he said to me, I said to him, all the Chassidish Nigunim, where'd they come from? So some of them the Rabbeim composed, those we know. Others Chassidim composed. What, did they compose them from scratch? Or did they sometimes repurpose, so to speak, a song that they heard? So he told me, Osher Nikolaev is Nigan, actually. Rab Osher was a Chassidish Sharid. He was at a wedding of simple people, like a wedding of some peasants in a shtetl, in some dorf. And he heard what's called a volach, like a waltz, a polka, whatever it's called. A very simple song. And he turned that into Osher Nikolaev's Nigan, the one we just saw. Since this is Shmuel's yahrziet. So with your permission, I asked my shver, so do you know what the polka sounded like? He said, yeah. And he sang it for me. And when he sang it, I have to say, I was transfixed. I was literally transfixed because I saw how a chassid took simple notes that if you heard them, you would never believe this becomes this hatzike, deep, yearning nugan of gaguyim and search and yearning of a chassidish nigan called Asher Nikolaev's nigan. So let me just give you the few notes. Maybe you do know the story, maybe you don't, but those of us that haven't heard it, I just thought it's a tremendous example. People want to know, what does Chassidus accomplish? You see this in just a few notes. So if my memory serves me right, this is how my shver sang the few notes. This was how they sang it. It was at the wedding. It was a little like what they call just a band. Klezmer, they called it. Klezmer comes from the word klezemer. The klezmer played like this. They played ay 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 did it ay 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 did it ay 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 did I did ay 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 did I ay 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 did it ay 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 did it ay 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 ay. There you have. What did Rab Osher do? Your great-grandfather, your illustrious grandfather, he took, he did Ay 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 na ay na ay ay na ay na 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 oy oy na ya na na oy 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 na 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 no ay na no ay na na oy ay na no. Oh, yeah, ya know. Oh, ya na, you know. Yeah, you know. Ya na. Oh, you know. I na, roy. Oh, you know. You know. Ananayanayanum. So he took ay 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 oh yanayanayanum yananayananayanum. There you see. So a chassid, he listens to a simple song and adds a whole new neshama dimension, the same notes. However, it's a different nigun. So I have no doubt you have someone, you all have the genes. Shmuel had the genes, has the genes of Rabbi Osher Nikolaev, and had the capacity to take simple things. And it's not like changing, you don't have to create yesh ma'ayin. You don't have to create from new. You take that which was given to us, whatever it may be, you reshape it and add a neshama, a soul, a spirit, purpose, meaning. What I see, a young man, how many people you know 15 years old had a sense of purpose? When I was 15 years old, I had no clue where I was going. Sense of purpose, a sense of urgency, a sense of mission is the Chavches Sivan message and the Gimel Tammuz message. We are on a mission. We don't always understand how. And this special day, with all on one hand, a painful day, but at the same time is the embracing of the mystique of the mysterious mission we're all on, the mysterious journey that God leads us. So I have no doubt our coming together now, hearing the beautiful words, all leading to absolutely everything has to come down to action, as Rabbi Lustig so powerfully said. It's not just thought, action. In mitzvahs, in limud HaTorah, in Avedas HaTfilah, and especially as we go from the days of Chof Ches Sivan to Gimel Tammuz, the mysterious day, but one thing we know, we are charged with all the strengths and all the power possible to do our mission. The Rebbe told us on another Chof Ches Nissen, in Tovshin Nun Aleph, 29 years ago, and told us that I did what I can, now do what you can, do everything you can. So there's no question that Rebbe didn't just give us a command, he gave us also strength, a strength. And I would like to believe that inspiration from a young man Shmuel, and Hashem deciding that his shlichus ended in this stage of his life, would give us strength, family, friends, and all of us. And I include myself in that, strength to forge ahead in our journey, using the inspiration of the legacy, yes, the legacy, and knowing full well, as I said before, like with Ramachol Dvorkin, that he's right now where the Rebbe, right with the Rebbe, conversing, bringing together, especially on days like Chof Ches Sivan and Gimel Tammuz, and he has an address, and the Rebbe knows the address, and may we accept that, and it be some form of consolation and comfort, but more importantly, motivate us to continue our shlichus. And there's no question, we keep forging ahead. Vayisou, we're not wavering, we're not distracted, we won't be hijacked in any way. We forge ahead, and we will reach the destination. The Schwindel Trepp, we're right near it. We were promised this by the Rebbe himself more than once, that we're at the finish line. And this long marathon, this long journey, and each leg of the journey was each generation carrying the baton. Now the baton has been passed to us. And the Rebbe says, all you need is one little thing that tips the scales. May this be that action, our coming together, our farbringing, Chassidish farbringing, and accomplishes something that nothing the Machal Malach Machol can accomplish. Come to the finish line, be reunited with Shmuel, with all the Chassidim, and above all with the Rebbe, together with all the Chassidim, with all our loved ones, and finally we'll be able to understand, Eitcha Hashem ki anaftabi. We'll be able to understand the larger narrative, the whole story. We'll see the entire spiral staircase, Geula Amitis Vashlema, together with the Rebbe, together with Shmuel. Thank you again for the honor to allow me to share a few words. Again, you should all be strong, stay well and healthy, and through this mysterious period in history, no question, this is the last shlav, the last step to the Geula Amitis Vashlema.